We'll get it figured out here in a minute. I can't remember which. There it is. That's what I use. What's going on, everybody? What's up, Clint? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, I got a little bit of a late start there. I started reading stuff and started opening up some of the pages I planned on sharing to, and checking those pages, make sure they didn't have any lives going. And there's my 2 notifications from Facebook. I wanted to check, make sure they didn't have any lives going before I post anything there, and time got away from me a little bit there. Crazy how that works. All right, y'all know the drill. Let me share it out there, and hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Had a good time with family. Hopefully there weren't too many arguments. I know how it is these days when family gets together. It's try not to talk politics or religion. So we just play games and fight over that, who wins and who cheated. All right, let me get these links shared. So hope everybody had a safe holiday. I know that getting a lot of snow up north. I noticed Chris Palin a minute ago posted a picture of some snow up there in Minnesota. So I guess that's definitely coming our way. I guess Ohio's supposed to get it tonight and maybe down here tomorrow. The longer they keep it up there, the better. I don't mind a little cold weather enough to kill the bugs and larvae and all that shit off. Keep those down, for next year. That's one good thing about the cold weather. It kills off a lot of the bugs and keeps the numbers down. Whereas places like Florida, man, they never die. Them bugs get huge down there. Mosquitoes big enough to carry you off. Cockroaches big enough to pack a lunch away. I remember working down there and I was working cable and TV cable. We rewired Vero Beach and after a hurricane, and man, going underneath some of these trailers and getting underneath some of these houses and crawl spaces, having to deal and seeing some damn roaches, 4 or 5 inches long, man. It's like takes a little bit getting used to. Snakes and bugs everywhere. I've never seen so many damn bugs. I don't know if Mark's going live or not. I hadn't posted there. I didn't see him live yet, so I'm not. He may be running later. He may be working. I don't know. He has to work like alternating. Sometimes he gets a month or two off of weekends, and then all of a sudden he has to work next 5 weekends. So you never know. Hard to schedule things, when you have a swing shift like that. But you can't do without him. I guess he's probably got the most experience in printing of everybody there. Last time I knew, he was working in a place that made lotto tickets. I'm like, damn, bro, send me a roll of those. But old Uncle Moonshine's a pretty good feller. Hope y'all saw Poppin' Lines video tonight. I don't know if you didn't, you need to find a site that he streams or shares it to. Of course, DIY Shining and Steel Building is a good place to see it. One of the best places, their militia page. But good instruction video on how to build a cape with just regular hand tools, nothing big and fancy. No big, huge hammer mills or anything like that. Just small roller, slip roller, and hand tools. He does a pretty good job with given what he's got to work with. He's a pretty good filler too. He's been around for a while and done quite a few instructional videos over the years, and he's now with us at DIY Shine Steel Building. He's a moderator there with Clint, and I'd like to welcome him to the group there. Been enjoyed watching his videos over the years. Learned a lot from old Gary, or popping lines. Seems like they let me share it to a little more pages than I'm used to. I know as soon as I say it, it's going to pop up red. No, wow. Man, they let me share it to everybody tonight without one swoop. That's awesome. I'm not used to that. I'll take it. Maybe they realize my content's not all that bad after all. All right, let's go through here. What's going on, Jason? Yes, sir. I had a good Thanksgiving. I got to spend the morning. We had a brunch with my dad and stepmom and my sister and her kids. And my daughter went and she cooked and served at the community center and to help feed the needy and the poor. And that was nice. So she spent her Thanksgiving doing that, and I went to my sister's house and spent it with my dad and stepmom and sister and her two kids, and Rose, my nephew's wife. And it was a good time. Learned to play mahjong. That was interesting. I'd seen them play that before, but I never played it, and I still haven't played it. But I watched them play a little bit of it, and kind of learned a little bit of it. Pretty, a lot of rules. A lot of rules that game. What's going on, John? Good to see you, JJ. Do I smoke weed? Well, the weed does the smoke, and I just inhale. So I let the weed smoke, and I might inhale. I know Bill Clinton said he didn't inhale it, but I think I might have done that a time or two. Yeah, man, it was horrible with them houses and them trailers. It was just full of snakes and spiders, always hot and sweaty and gritty and dirty with that sand, and it gets everywhere. And then you got to couple that with spiders and snakes and cockroaches, the size of a school bus. It was crazy. Yeah, well, I mean, having to run them wires underneath the house, in some of the ground blocks, and have to go in, and it wasn't fun. Popping lines, Popping Lines. Used to be catching bait. I think he had his Facebook stolen or something, or he might have got canceled to Facebook for a comment or two. Who knows? But it either got deleted or he might have gotten stolen. I had mine stolen once. I was an admin in a lot of different groups and had to take my admin away because I was afraid they'd go into the groups and shut them down or kick everybody out or do something, and contacted Facebook, didn't get any help with them. And I basically read about how they hacked it, and I hacked it back from the hackers. That's how I got it back. I did the same thing to them they did to me. That was pretty rewarding. But basically, how they do it is they go in and change your. Well, I'm not going to say how to do it. I guess I better not give lessons on how to hack. That might get me in trouble. But yeah, I had to hack it back. How's it going down there in Bristol, Tennessee? I used to listen to a DJ that played out of Bristol. His name was he sounded like the Wolfman Jack, but his name was the Midnight Rambler out of Bristol, Kingsport, Johnson City, Tennessee, WQUT. That sound familiar, Dana? It was back in the 70s, man. He sounded a lot like the Wolfman, though, and he played some good hard rock, man. We loved him. We used to have to drive to the top of the hills in eastern Kentucky so we could get that radio station, but we'd go up on top of those hills and have big parties and sit those Pioneer 6x9, deck speakers, I guess, put them up on top of the car and have a big old party up on the strip jobs. Regular moonshine. Oh, that's good. I'm glad you're home spending it with family, brother. That's awesome. Yeah, I've actually, my dad, one time he owned a bunch of trailers, and one I remember sewer leaking. It was all underneath the trailer, and guess who gets to crawl under there and fix it, man? It was nasty. They let it go for a long time. It was muddy. It was just raw sewage, and yeah, I didn't like having to do that. The video should be, it's on the DIY Shine and Steel Building page, and it's on the militia page, and should be on, most of the pages I just shared this video to. It's on those too. I saw, on pretty much most of the sites. He's building a cape, so popping lines, popping, Popping, like popping corn. But he's popping lines because he's a fisherman. Used to be a big shrimper. Now he's in construction. Great guy. What's going on, Mash Brothers? Good to see you, brother. What's going on, Curtis? Good to see you, Master Drummond's son. Yeah, I'm not real fond of spiders. You should see the video I have on I've got a video on my Facebook page of outside. We got a pool, and we have these big tall cylinders, like big tall plastic cylinders. Are hollow, but they come up, and we used to have ashtrays sit on top of them. And I guess there used to be garbage cans underneath them. You can just pop it and dump the garbage underneath it and put it back down. You might have a bag, I guess, that could sit on it too, but we didn't put any garbage. We just dumped them in a little, garbage bag or grocery store bag and then did it that way. But anyway, in that cylinder, every fall I go and I clean everything up, get everything up, usually in the late fall, October, when all the spiders are out breeding and, the orbs are building their big webs and stuff. And those, I like the orbs, they're pretty cool. But inside one of them was a big ass black widow, man. As soon as I saw it, I knew what the hell it was because it's, big black body with them little teeny spindly legs. And I was like, damn. And as soon as it moved over, I seen her red, hourglass, and it was a big one. So I decided to do a little video of it just creeping around in there on its web and stuff. And man, a lot of people, it really creeped them out watching that black widow move around like that. It's a pretty wild little video. It's been on there. I did that probably 10 years ago, but it's still on there. If anybody wants to go to my Facebook page, click on videos, and you'll find it. It's pretty wild. But yeah, those things, they were around here for years. I guess I've sprayed enough to got rid of them. I hadn't seen any in a long time, but after seeing that, man, I stepped up my spray and I got my garden sprayer out and I'm going all over now, And I hadn't seen any since then. I might have seen one since. I think I saw one since and killed it for sure too. Yeah, can't have them. They'll hurt animals and everything. Well, I don't. There's some spiders I'll leave alone, like the orbs, and some spiders are good. It's It's the brown recluse and the black widows around here, and we have both. And those are the ones I'll get rid of. But the little wolf spiders and jumping spider, they're cute as can be, man. And them big orbs, they won't hurt nobody. And we got, sometimes I'll leave a little spider web here and there in the house around the doors, just get rid of all the damn other bugs. Gotta have something to kill them other bugs off. I don't want like spraying a bunch, so I'll leave a little spider web here and there just to help keep the flies down. They like those little fruit flies. So in your shine shack, leave those spider webs up and let them keep control of your fruit flies that way. Most of the spiders don't hurt you. But down there they got these what do they call them? The banana spiders or something? She ain't listening. They got banana spiders or something down there that are also poisonous. And they got a few more spiders down there that are bad. Yeah. Well, growing up as a kid, we used to catch a lot of snakes and stuff, and it didn't matter if it was a copperhead, rattlesnake, green snake, black snake, we'd catch it and get little forked sticks and trap its head and grab it and scare people with it and then throw it. We'd kill most of the bad ones, though. But I probably killed a lot of rat snakes thinking it was a copperhead. Oh yeah, let me make them big and wide. Gotta remind me of these things. I was thinking about it a minute ago. Got busy thinking about these damn spiders and snakes. So yeah, what's going on, Justin? Good to see you, brother. Mr. Children of the Corn out there. Hope you're doing well, brother. Them barking spiders, huh? Those little wolf spiders are cute, man. I like watching them. They scamper around and you get around them, they get all defensive, act like they're like little chihuahuas, man. They get all bad like they're gonna do something. They're harmless. What's going on? Did I miss you saying howdy, Mash Brothers? What's going on, brother? But yeah, check out Gary's post, Popping Lines video. It's making a cape and good method. The only thing I would have done a little different, maybe instead of using the the tape measure to make the arch, you could use a string and do the same thing, but probably a little harder to gauge the. I've done that cut that he did marking drywall and stuff. It's not very exacting, but yeah, good stuff, man. Good video. But I guess it'd be hard, really, too. I guess strings are good if it doesn't have to be exact. But I guess that way he did it's a little bit more exact on the. It'd be hard to tie that knot and get that string and get that 22 and a quarter just exactly right. And too, you get your angle on your pin in those strings. It could go through that string. And you could be above it or behind it, and that make an inch difference. A little bit twist there. So maybe it is better to lay it down like that and do it. I've not worked with it like that. Not done a lot of sheet metal work. Never did any fascia or any stuff sheet metal work like that when we were building. We subbed most all that out. So I never did a lot of sheet metal work. Never worked with a brake much. Well, I have with a buddy of mine who's a roofer, but that was on one occasion, and that was just to try and see how it worked, and been a little bit, but we always subbed that out. So that's something I never really spent a lot of time working with metal. What's going on, Carpenter? Good to see you, brother. Doing good. Y'all have a good Thanksgiving. Yeah, and starting out with a good recipe. A good recipe and using a good yeast. Is vital. Good recipe, good yeast, and that hydrometer to make sure that you're getting your sugar. Because somebody the other day was talking about, old timers didn't need it and did. And what I usually preach doing is when you're using your hydrometer, stick your finger in there first, taste it, and try to guess what you got. Don't say, okay, I know we got about 2 pounds of sugar in there for every gallon, so I know I'm 108 of. I'm gonna guess 108 of. No. Try to guess it based on the taste and just say, that tastes. I'm gonna guess 1065, 1070. When you do a grain run, and see after you do your conversion, taste it and see, and see how accurate you can be just with tasting, and then drop your hydrometer in. Of course, strain all the solids off, and just drop your hydrometer in the liquid, and check it and see what you got, and see how close you are, and that way, someday, not if but when your hydrometer breaks, you'll be able to kind of be close, and yeah, I guess the Great White North up there, you all have a little bit earlier. Yeah, that's pretty good, brother. Black turkey, man. Blackened turkey. I take it wasn't intentional. I heard somebody had their oven at 450 instead of 350. Or oil. That's what it was. They were frying it and had their oil at 450 instead of 350. Yeah, I heard quite a few horror stories. I saw some pictures too that looked pretty bad. Different people having little overcooked turkey. We actually went to my sister's and had brunch and had a frittata. I called it quiche. And they're like, no, it's a frittata. I'm like, okay, I don't know what the fuck that is, but it's damn good. It tastes like quiche to me. But had that and some bread and some scones. But after that, we decided, and it was her only day off. She had to work Wednesday and then Friday. So I said, I'm not gonna make her go home and slave and cook a turkey and dressing and gravy and mashed potatoes and baked pies and do all that. She has to work tomorrow. So we ended up going to a Chinese buffet and feeding our faces. And it actually, that Chinese buffet, we go there quite often, and they put quite a bit of different stuff out that they normally do. So they made it pretty good. Made it pretty good. But it was a non-traditional Thanksgiving dinner for us, but it was good. But yeah, taste it kind of before and measure your starting gravity, and then as it goes, taste it. And I know a lot of people are looking there and they're like, ew, it looks gross, I don't want to taste it. That's just beer, man. That's if if you're going to make it to something that you can taste, or if it's not something that you want to taste, whether it's a beer or a wine, then you're doing something wrong. If it's got bacteria crawling all over it, you need to clean up and have a little bit more sanitary. A lot of people say, oh, sanitary doesn't matter, you're just gonna distill it. But sometimes you might want to keep that as a beer or a wine. It might taste so damn good, you're just like, wow, I don't want to make this. This is, I'm gonna keep the wine. I'm not gonna make a brandy out of it. So it's best to go for beer and wine, and if it doesn't work out, or if you intend to, but it's best to make something that you can sample and taste. But get a taste of it, and as it ferments, reach in there, taste it, and see what's going on, and taste it, and and then when you get to the point where it tastes a little bit bitter and it doesn't, you don't have any stickiness, you can feel it in your fingers and see if they stick together, see if you got any sticky syrups in there, sugars in there still. And if not, then, guess what your final gravity is and drop your hydrometer in there and check it. And wort, wash, beer, must, mash, whatever. But check it, check it and see. Because, yep, always. And check it and test it. That way, you can kind of get familiar with how it's supposed to taste when it gets at this gravity. Oh, that's a 1.1. I would have sworn that was finished. I didn't really pick up any of that sweetness. I really wasn't tasting that. Or at the other end, and that's a 1070. I would have sworn that's, barely a 1050. It didn't taste that sweet, or it tasted a lot sweeter to me. So it's a good thing to kind of do it, the old school way and taste it. And the same thing with temperature. I found that temperature is pretty easy if you're talking about yeast pitching temps, um, because or starting your yeast, in a starter. When you run your finger or a hand underneath the sink, if water feels cold to you, it's less than 98.1. If it feels warm to you, it's above 98.1. If it doesn't feel cold or warm to you, it's generally right around 98 degrees, so you can test that too and use your hand to, because that's about the starting temperature that you want, is about 98 is a fine, 95 to start a lot of your yeast. Now, I probably wouldn't do a wine yeast that way, but a data yeast, a bread yeast, which is what I use most of the time, or a whiskey type yeast, those are fine, to start at those temperatures to make your starter, that you dissolve the sugar in, they shake and let it foam up. Because once you dump it into that cooler, mash, it's going to, cool down considerably. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, Paul. Might be a lump of coal, buddy. I know y'all been bad now. That's why you're here. Yeah. That's what, I'm seeing a lot of that right now, and every fall and the beginning of every winter, it always happens, and it's fine. People, got started in the spring. They got that steel for Christmas, and they couldn't wait till it got warm. So it got warm, and they started making their mashes and their washes and musts, and next thing you know, they're getting experience, and then they're getting it down, and they got their recipe set, and everything's fine. And then all of a sudden, fall and winter, starts cooling off a little bit, and you start seeing the questions. Well, why is this, ferment slowing down? This normally only takes me 4 or 5 days. It's been 2 weeks. What the hell? And it's like, oh, what's your temperature? And 68, 65. Well, it's going to take a while longer to that temperature. Them yeast are back dormant. They're slowing down. A lot of your wine yeast will still work at that, but it's going to take weeks instead of days. So either warm it up or be patient and wait. It's best to, depending on the yeast, you can let it stay cool. 68 to 72 in that range for a EC 1118, which a lot of people use. They don't realize that's champagne yeast, and it actually prefers those cooler temperatures. So, you know, keeping that wine yeast at that lower temperature is just fine, and it actually works best that way. You don't get a lot of off flavors and stressed yeast. You take that wine yeast up into the mid 80s, where a lot of bread yeast or distillers yeast likes to be, and that's not very conductive for a wine yeast. And the same in obverse. If you take that bread yeast or that distiller's yeast or daty or whatever, and you take it down to the low 70s, it's like it's about ready to just go sleep. I mean, it's ready to, you know, it's low. And I think last week somebody mentioned lager yeast is when your temperature gets down, and that's a lower temp yeast as well, and that's a good idea, if for your grains. So you have to kind of adjust things too based on the yeast and based on the temperatures. You may try different yeast based on the temperatures, or like I say, pull the old radiator heater out. I got mine in there. I had mine just at room temperature, was in the mid 60s, wasn't doing anything, and I saddled up one of my oil field radiator heaters and set it in there next to it and slowly brought it up to temp. And next thing you know, those things are working like crazy. And so that gotta watch your temperatures and keep your temperatures up. Now, I will say that it got a little bit warm and it started giving off a little sulfurish smell. And I was like, what the hell? And I looked, and it was, in the high 70s, low 80s. And that's why it's starting to give off some odors, because it was that EC1118, and it doesn't like it warm like that. So it put off a little bit, off odor a little bit, which is a telltale sign of stress. And it's going to probably affect the flavor. But I'm neutralizing all this stuff anyway. It's just a bunch of apple juice. I was going to make a apple rye, but it got starting slow, and I'm like, I'm not going to waste any rye on this thing, and it's not going to be a real good ferment. And after I smelled it, I'm like, I'm definitely not putting rye in it now. I'm going to do an apple rye. But it was apples and some apple juice that had expired, and it got cheap, and so which works fine. But I'll probably make it neutral. Yep. Yeah, there's carbonic acid. There's quite a few organic acids that are created. You got butyric acids. You got quite a few. I mean, there's lactic acids. There's lots of organic acids that are produced in the fermentation process. It's just part of the natural process. That's why we talk about the oyster shells, and how that helps, especially in those washes that ferment really quickly, those high sugar ferments that tend to stress and ferment quickly. And the more stress you have, it seems like the more organic acids that it kicks off. And that's usually not a good thing. Yeah, that helps. Yep. Yeah, putting the copper in there for sure. And I was thinking, when I smelled this, I'm definitely running this. I got me a new little column, bubble plate, 4-inch bubble plate column. It's I didn't know the damn thing was going to come in unassembled. So I got to you've seen the big long tall glass ones with the silicone in between each and the bubble plate, and it's big long. I thought it'd come assembled, and they sent me the damn thing in pieces. Man, I'm like, God, so I'm going to have to spend, half a day putting that some bitch together, and all my bubblers and everything. I'll have to assemble everything from the plate up to the bubblers, everything, and I was like, damn, if I'd known that, I just bought, probably talking to Frank about it, and not a regular Frank, not Hellbilly, but different Frank. And he was asking me about this column versus, you just use the sight glass with the bubble plates that go with them. And I was kind of mixed. I'm like, I think I'm just going to go with this. It's cheaper. But after looking back, and it's lighter weight, which is good, but you don't have really as many options. You use all four in it. It's glass, it's stacked, and you got these big long metal. It's like a big long sight glass. So you have the long metal spindles, to hold it all together. And looking back, I think I would have just soon spent a little bit more. And now the sight glasses are considerably more heavy when you stack 4 of them up versus this long glass column. But you have options too. You can run 1, 2, or 3, or 4. When you have sight glasses, it's easier to clean without disassembly. You just take each sight glass off, clean them inside, just rinse them. But this thing, to clean it, you're going to have to take each glass thing off, all the spindles off, disassemble, and that's going to be a pain in the ass. So I probably would have just gone with the sight glasses and dealt with the weight. But we learn as we go. How many pounds of corn would you use for a 20-gallon mash? 1 pound per gallon or more? I would use more if you're converting it. Definitely go with about 2.5, and use your amylase. Definitely the best way to go with corn, other than just the old thin mash like we used to do. Definitely the best way to go, and do about 2. If you have the liquid high temp, you can easily go 2.5 or 3. but we were talking about it last week. I like to gelatinize it and then add the amylase. And if you do go with like 3, or like some people like to do, you can get a higher gravity with 3. You can get, I've heard 1075, 1080 with 3. It might be best to go ahead and put some of that amylase in, like Clint was talking about, early on, instead of waiting like I do, because it'll get really thick and concrete almost. It gets really thick on you. So might just, maybe a third of what you'd have to use right up front, keep it a little bit on the thin side, and then the other 2/3 after you gelatinize, maybe a good route to go, kind of step it that way. But yeah, two and a half of a gallon would get you there. And that way you don't have to use any sugars. What's going on, Skyrider? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, I know, but man, it's going to be a pain in the ass. I just didn't clean the sight glass because when I clean my sight glasses, I don't take those metal spindles out and take them all apart and clean them, and that's basically what this is doing. But yeah, I have to take each little section of that long tube out every time and clean them, and that makes it more like work, man. I'm a lazy when it comes with shit like that. Oh, I'll be able to get it. It's a time thing. It's a pain in the ass, and the fact that it's just going to take me hours to do it. And I wish they'd just shipped it assembled. And I could have used it a few times before I had to take it all apart and clean it, because I damn sure ain't going to totally disassemble that thing every time I use it. I'm going to spray it out and use it until I get a little build up around those silicone rings, and then I'll probably, take it out once every few runs, take it apart. Yeah, basically it came, like these lantern glass, except it's a lot thicker and it's borosilicate, but it's like lantern glass, and then it's got like a silicone, high temp silicone ring that they stack in, and then inside that you stack the bubble plates, and the actual bubble plates I have to screw in each little fitting and down comber and all this stuff, and build the bubble plates and build it all up, and then put the metal, and put the silicone, and then the metal top and bottom at each, and then put the spindles, and tighten those up. It's just going to be a pain in the ass. What's going on up there in the great white north, man? I saw all that snow. You keep that shit up there, bro. I don't want none of that. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving, brother. Yeah, now if it's just silicone between spindles, it really depends. I think like if you're doing like on top of a keg where you've got one side's flat, one side's ridged, I think that silicone would work best there, because it's got a little bit of give and it's squish, because a lot of times when you use the what do they call it? It's another word for the Teflon. PTFE, polyethylene fluoral, that's something, yeah. But the PTFE for my regular spools, just on a column or something like that, absolutely, I'd rather have Teflon or PTFE. But for like, if you've got a column that's sitting on a keg and you got that flat, you always put the flat next to the keg and then the ridge to where the spool is. And I think that works. It's a little more forgiving, and when you put that tri clamp on, a lot of times with the PTFE, it gets really hard to to seal and to get that on. And if you use the silicone, it's got a little bit of squish to it, and it's easier to get that on and work better. But any other place, I prefer to have the PTFE, the Teflon. It's like a plastic. It's not like the tape that you're used to seeing, Teflon tape. So technically Teflon is a plastic, but it's also, when they make the tape, it's just in a different form there. And a lot of people don't realize that, but Teflon it's a form of a plastic, and it's very inert, and probably the best to use. Alan Bishop and I talked about it, and he's like, we have silicone, but over the years they've had in their column. And some of those, high temp silicones, after 10 or 11 years, they start to break down. And he said in certain spots, especially, where it had, probably closer to the steel, where it got a lot more heat, they broke down a little quicker. So he was thinking they were going to go to PTFE too. And it's they both work exceptionally well. They both work fine, but over a long period of time, that heat will start to work and break down the silicone probably faster than the PTFE. But both of them are just fine. I've replaced all my silicone with the PTFE. I like it. Yeah, let's get out of here. Oh, getting this 145 proof. Have to. Man, every time I drink this shit, I get thrush. Man, it kills all the bacteria in my mouth, and I start getting cotton mouth and white tongue and thrush, and I might start chasing it or mixing it or kissing them more often to get that bacteria built up. So what I need to do. That's a fact. That's right. Everybody hit that like button and make sure you're following us on YouTube, especially. I know I get notifications better on YouTube than I do on Facebook. But do follow us on Facebook at DIY Shine and Steel Building and Moonshine Militia. And I never mention it, but we do the podcast from Distilling 101. It's actually a podcast page that you can follow as well, and you will get pretty decent notifications from there if you have that little bell set to notify. I think it's a bell on Facebook. But yeah, just have it set to where it'll notify you, and it'll every time we do a podcast. I think we do one Friday, Saturday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Wednesday. Have different ones going. Something for everybody. Not everybody likes the shit show, or most people like the Thursday night ladies night, and Lisa and Charlene and Mama B and all of them get in there and chat. They're fun. Well, now as far as the mesh, I take the mesh out every time and I'll rinse it out real good, and I'll keep it in a jar and let it soak in water, and get good, soak it real well in the water, and then I'll take it out and dry it. And I'll repeat that until it gets a little tarnished, and then I'll put it in a little bit of weak citric acid water mix or vinegar and water mix, and then let that acid work on it, and then rinse it off real well. And I'll do that until I can't keep it clean anymore, and then I just throw it away and start with some fresh. I guess I don't know if you can recycle that copper mesh. I guess you can, but I just pitch it and start with fresh. It'll last quite a few runs if you keep it rinsed off and clean. You'll get quite a few runs out of it, and just drop it like I keep it. It's one of those. I guess it's not pickles. It's something else that comes in these big round jars, and it has a big wide mouth, so it's easy to get that in and out. Now that I have a 4-inch, bubble plate, I won't have to fool with it much, but I'll still use that mesh, even though I'm using the bubble plate as well. I've got 2-inch, so it goes from 2-inch up to 4 column, back down to 2, and I'll probably stack some mesh either before or after that, just to help with the neutral, just to help take the sulfites out. I'm not using as much for reflux at that point. I have a deflegmator or deflamator for that, but if y'all were here last week, we were trying to determine whether it's deflegmator, deflamator, or deflectmator. I don't know. I think it's Some people say it's a silent G. I think it's not deflegmator, but I think it's deflegmator. You know, I don't know. Is that a German word, or I don't know its origins? But I take it out every time and rinse it off and try to keep it pretty clean, and gets oxidized a little bit, turns like an old start looking like an old penny. I'll drop it in some vinegar and water and clean it up a little bit. Yep, yep, one per plate. All right, I'm gonna have to decipher what we got here. Metal yellow first red, figurehead number 1 yellow. All right. What's this? I'm trying to decipher this. Is this a code? Yeah, that's what I plan on doing with mine. I'm gonna rinse it out until I can see, maybe some buildup or something. If I puke into it or something with a little something, and stain it or something like that, then I'll pull it apart and clean it. But yeah, hopefully I don't have to clean it very often. Yeah, I think mine's just a 4 plate. I don't know though. Maybe there's a plate at the top and bottom, and then I know there's like 4 sections. There's like 4 pieces of glass. So there's going to be 1, 2, 3 sections in there. And I think there's one at the bottom and top. That would be 5, maybe I could squeeze in there. But yeah, I'll definitely have a little mesh, but it's considered a 4 plate. Yeah. I guess there's one on the bottom and not one on the very tippy top going into the spool. But I could put, I guess I'll put I'll pack that reducer going from 4 to 2 at the top. I'll just make me a bunch of, make a big old wad of the mesh to go in there and stuff it in there. It'll be fine. That way it'll be underneath the deflegmator or whatever. And it'll get worked over it pretty well. Yeah, but we talked about, me and Frank talked about how using just separate sight glasses, right? And those are real easy to stack, but it's a lot more expensive to buy 4 of those than to just buy one of this longer plate. But really, it's only like 30-40 bucks more, but a lot more weight. But I do like the ability to go 2, 3, or 4, depending on how much reflux you want to do. So, there's pros and cons to both. And if I'd known that I was going to have to assemble it and how long and flimsy it is, I might have gone, because I'm really not worried about weight so much, because I have, a hook in the ceiling, and I've got some wire that I use to suspend everything from and support everything. So it's not all, my steel doesn't get much weight on it at all. In fact, I have to kind of pull it down to connect it to the steel. So it's supported very well. That's a good question. I think Missouri has like 150 gallons. No, it's 100 gallons per person, up to 2 people. So at any given time, you can have a couple of 100 gallons. I think that's extremely generous. It's actually 100 per person, and you can have up to 2 people over 21 that can legally do it, have it. But it has to stay at home. And if there's only one circumstance, I guess, and you have to get a permit to take it out of the home. And that's if you have like a private party, a wedding party, or something like that. can't be anything public or anything like that. And there can't be any charging or anything like that. But you have to get a special permit to take it out of the home. But otherwise, it has to stay within the home. And I think that's a good way to do it. But I think 100 gallons is very generous. And on the other hand, West Virginia comes out and, okay, yeah, we're going to make it legal too. You can have a gallon at a time. And that was kind of, what, a gallon? It's like, that's less than I get out of my run, bro. That's one run. That's less than a run. I'm going to have to pour half my run out, on a 15-gallon keg still. And it's like, come on, man. So then I think they might have increased it to 5. And I don't know if they have, per person up to 2 per home like in Missouri, but at least it's headed in the right direction and they've made it legal. I think somewhere in between, would be, I think 50, enough to put in a barrel, 53 or something like that, enough to fill a full size barrel and just put the brakes on, man. Just, I'm going to fill that barrel up and I'm done. Or a couple of 15s, having 30, I got 2 15 barrels full and I'm done. Something like that I think would be good. Just give somebody the opportunity to fill up a barrel and just nurse off that and add to it as they want to and just keep that 53. But I think a barrel would be a good round number, 53, 55, gallon would be a really good kind of happy medium for somebody that just wanted to fill up a barrel and just kick back and just drink out of the barrel and replenish it as they drink and just kind of keep cycling it that way, which is kind of my goal. I'm going to try to do, but I've got a couple of 15s and 5 and some smaller, Sam Mo's and Bad Mo's. And so I'm going to try to fill those 2 15s, one with whiskey, one with brandy, and have a little choice of both. And I don't know, the 5, I'll probably put some grains in the 5 too. It'll be just something I don't have to wait so long on, so I'm not snaking into those 15s before it's mature. And the 5s will do a lot quicker. Those 5s just a few months, 6 months, plenty. Whereas the 15s will probably take a year, year and a half, to get good. Because I like it smoky and oaky, man. I like it. So, but I think 53 would be a good number. 55, I guess. And just keep that barrel full and just sip off that and make it as you need to add some more. You drink a few gallons, you make a few gallons, dump it in there, and just kind of keep track of what you drink out of it and replenish it as you can. I think it'd be awesome. That's the goal. With the beer and wine, it's ridiculous. With beer and wine, it's like thousands. It's for a hobby, it's like hundreds and hundreds or thousands of gallons. Before you have to have a license. And, you can even sell it as a hobby, but you have to, declare it on your taxes. You have to add that, on hobby income. But yeah, as a hobby, you can, in different states, it's different, of course. But here, you can have quite a bit as a hobby winemaker or beer maker. It's a lot. So yeah, I don't think they'd allow you to do the same with liquor, thousands of gallons. It'd be like, a little craft distillery at home. Yeah. Yeah, I've always wanted to call them, and it's neutralizing. I want to get that 190, and I can get that with my smaller column and packing it and using the deflagmator and cold water and all that. But I've always wanted a larger column and bubble plates, and I know that if you do go with the bubble plate, the 2-inch is really kind of undersized. I guess if you had a real tall 2-inch, you could be okay. And 3-inch is a little bit small. And Alan Bishop seemed to think that 4 is definitely the way to go. If you're going to go, just spend that little bit more and get the 4. And I agree. If you're going to do it, spend that extra $50 and get that 4-inch instead of the 3. You're going to get so much more area. Look at, just do the calculations in the numbers of 3 inch versus 4 inch, and look at how much more surface area you get. It's not double, but there's considerably more. And it's so for the little slight increase, I think 4 would be the minimum, especially if your future plans might be to upgrade a little bit and get a little bit bigger still. If you plan on going with a 30 or 40 gallon at one point, it'll be a good idea to go ahead and get that 4 now instead of something smaller, and then you're going to have to end up getting a different one because you didn't get a big enough one to start with. What's going on, Pete? How's it going, brother? I appreciate you, man. Bring your questions if you got any. Yeah, you want to see my nose get redder, don't you? Y'all can see my face. I start out, it's about the same color as my damn beard. And as I drink some of these, man, it just keeps getting redder and redder, man. I'll be Rudolph looking here. Look, my nose already is getting red. The other day I drank some of that. I thought it was 80 or 90 proof stuff, and I was in for a big surprise. Yeah, I got these little pickle jars I use. They work pretty well. Of course, this is now that I'm using 4 inches balls of copper, it's going to be a little bit different. Because, I think the damn roll comes in about that size, man. I just buy the roll and just not even unroll it, just stick it in there. But I'll loosely pack it and give it plenty of room. But when you do use the copper, it's best not to use it down low, right where the liquor, the steam and the vapors come right out of the pot and go into your column. Best to kind of use it up a little higher. Reason being, you don't want to puke into it and have particles of puke. If you've got some particles in there, start mixing up. Or if you got a thumper coming out of your thumper, you could do the same thing, puke. If you got some purees in there and stuff like that, keep it a little bit higher. You don't want a lot of puke start building up, because then you can start building up pressure, when you got particulates blocking your vapor path, like that. So be conscious not to put it too close to that. I like keeping the sight glass on mine right when it comes out of the still, and that way I can see what's coming out. If it's vapors, if I'm spitting up, and I know to turn temperature down a little bit. Uh-huh. Either way, you can't go wrong. It's I was trying to decipher that code, and I know that's some kind of looks like some kind of HTML code or some shit. You'd see the page. Yeah, me too, man. That's why I was thinking, if I had to take that some bitch apart and clean it every time, yeah, I'm not going to be using it as often as I thought. Because hobbies have to be fun. When they start becoming work, it's not a hobby anymore. It's a job. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if I could do 50, I'd be happy. I get me a big old barrel and just fill it up and just put a tap on it, and just every gallon I take out, add a gallon, or every couple of gallons, whatever run is, 2.5, whatever you get off your still, drink that much off of it each time. And as you do, then just do another run, pour it in there, and just keep cycling it. I think that would be a pretty fair way to go. Yeah, the 2-inch plates are just too small, and the threes, 2-inch plates have one. They have one little, it's basically a 3/8 inch or a 5/8 inch cap. You know, it's just in copper cat with little cuts in it, perforated plate, and you just screw that cap down on it. I mean, you can make your own plates, um, and that's all it is. That's just a bit small. You know, you'd have to have a pretty tall one to make it effective, and quite a few big stack of sight glasses or something to pack it in. Whereas three, you have like three in it. That's like set like that. Boom, boom, boom. You got one little downcomer and then two caps. And that's considerably better than a two. But you look at the difference in the three and then the fours, they'll have like five or six, and it's like that's considerably larger and better. Going to the six, you'd have to have, in my opinion, you'd have to have a pretty good size steel. If you got a, you know, maybe a 60 plus gallon steel, then maybe the six, or stacked fours. You can stack a couple fours on top of each other and be pretty well. But yeah, once you get to 60, 80 gallons, maybe going something a little bit bigger or a taller stack. I know what you meant. But yeah, I hope to. Guess I'm gonna have to build me a little 30, 40 gallon copper. Have a little something larger to run some of these grains, because I definitely want to fill these barrels up, and I really would love to fill a full size barrel up and just put it in my crawl space, and just let it sit there and just go in there anytime I want to get a little bit out and add to it, and that way I get the good weather changes, and my house has a basement, but it's got under just one section a little crawl space. I don't know why in the hell they just didn't do it all basement. Beyond me, but it's got just a real small crawl space, which is pretty cool. Plan on digging it out and using it for storage, but as I get older, that job seems a little bit more and more out of reach. So maybe I won't dig it out so much. Maybe I'll just trench around a little bit and make it where I can stand in there and just put a bunch of plastic down and store some stuff, because I need more storage. My storage building's wood, and it's got termites and wood borers and everything else eating on it. I've used pallet boards and stuff, Dutch lapping them and painting them and trying to keep it even some of the windows rotten, and I'm just Dutch lapping over the windows, and I've about expended all the effort on that I'm going to, because the floor and the joists are starting to give out a little bit, and on one side it's got a little hole where I guess animals are starting to get in there now, so it's like it's got to go. Once the animals start getting in there and pissing on everything, it's either give everything up and let it get ruined by the raccoon urine, or it's I guess I'm gonna put a cargo shipping container in there and paint it and try to make it presentable for the neighbors get all too huffy over it. And being metal, I won't have to worry about termites and wood borers and all that shit anymore. And put some shelving on it on both sides. Maybe a 10 by 30 would be awesome. That's probably what I'll try to do, a 10 by 30. I guess those things have about a 10-foot ceiling too, so that'd be plenty of ceiling height, and 10 by 10 by 30. So I can put me some big shelves on each side and have me a little work area in there. And they're cheap. You can pick them up for a couple $1,000s. Try getting a 10 by 10 by 20 or 30 woodshed for that, and building it and building trusses and floor joists, and you ain't gonna do it. Wes just finished his. He's got like a 14 by 28, and it's real nice though. I mean, he's gone all out. He's got wood stave walls and galvanized corrugated ceiling, and it looks nice, real nice. He was showing it last night. He worked probably 12-hour, 13-hour day yesterday on it. I talked to him last night. And yeah, it's looking real good. I think Frank's got a real nice one too. He's been sending me pictures of his. Is he's using some pallet wood, and he takes a torch and torches that pallet wood, and it looks real nice. Let's pull up a picture and show you. Well, yeah, he's done a nice job, man. Let's see if I can get a good picture of it. You might not want me showing these, son. Yeah, all the pictures have his stills and stuff in it, and he's not posting these online, so he may not want people seeing it. But he's got a bunch of pallet wood. He's doing the inside, not outside, with the pallet wood, and he's going over it with a torch and torching it, and then nailing it up and sealing it. And it's real nice looking, man. So yeah, everybody's getting a little steel buildings looking a lot better than mine. I'm gonna have to clean mine out. What's going on, Brandon? Good to see you, brother. Hope you and yours had a good Thanksgiving. So yeah, I like the look of that. I guess it's maybe a pine that he's using. I don't know pallets, but they got maybe. I guess some of those pallets are oak. Anyway, he's taking the torch to it and using it, and it kind of highlights the wood grain. Looks real good. That's good. Well, now you all had Thanksgiving about a month ago, then, didn't you? So hopefully it was good a month ago. I guess, well, y'all do it in October. Yeah, we got quite a few people up there. What's up, dog? What's up, man? Good to see you. I have to check out your videos. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's easier to load your plates better. The larger it gets. Sometimes, the smaller it is, you get that increased vapor velocity, and it gets so fast that it's just throwing everything up the column. When you don't get to get that to load your plates properly, to get that somewhat fractional, fractionizing, I guess. Good to meet you, man. And check us out, man. All our past videos, hit that like button and subscribe. And we come on, we're here on Wednesday night at 8 Eastern and Saturday night at 8 Eastern. And bring your questions. If you're seasoned, come in and talk with us. If you're new, come in. We break it down from the very beginning to, what type still would be best for you based on whatever you want to distill, all the way up to get pretty advanced in the science of distillation and stuff. So as your hobby progresses, join us, bring your questions here, and come help out as you learn, and share what you've done and learned, and we all working together. What can I do for making a sugar shine? Reactivate the yeast. Yeah, I don't know. Sugar shine. I just start with 2 pounds of sugar per gallon. Yeast, now temperature's an issue this time of year, so keeping it warm. is important, and we've talked about that earlier. It's whatever yeast you're using. If it's EC 1118, 68, 72, 75 is fine. Anything above that, it starts to get a little bit of stress about it. If you're using bread yeast or daddy yeast, you can, get by with a little bit, definitely warmer temps. Yeah, and somebody was mentioning that last week. But let me get back to, so 2 pounds per gallon. Don't forget your oyster shells. With the gravity, with you're not doing any converting or anything like that. So starting pH doesn't have to be 5.3, and I guess with a sugar shine or something like that, it may be better to start at a little bit higher pH. Like a 6 or 7. That'll give you a little bit, buy you a little time before the pH starts to plummet, and from the fast, as it works off really quickly. We were talking about the organic acids, how they start to build up. You got quite a few different organic acids that are formed during fermentation naturally, and as you stress and as it happens quicker, they tend to produce more. So, damn, bro, I hate to hear that. I just saw that. Yeah, well, as you heal up, hang out with us, man, and we'll pray for you, brother. It seems like that's happening a lot. Here in the States too. We've got a lot of people that's been handed CDLs that never even took the classes and stuff. We're finding out they've been paying off people at the DMV to give them a CDL. They pay a little $500 to the lady at the DMV, and I don't even have to take the test. They just look both ways. Here you go. And all of a sudden, you got some unexperienced person in an 18-wheeler that can't even read the signs because they don't speak the language or understand. And I know up there, in Canada, you got English and French, so sometimes they may not be able to read one of the signs. I guess up there they got both translated on each sign, but got a lot of people that can't even read the signs, driving 18-wheelers loaded down and making U-turns right in the middle of the highway because they figured out they was going the wrong way instead of just taking the next exit and turning around. Now they just try to make a U-turn where the cops do, and kill people. It's ridiculous. So we'll pray for you, brother. Hope you get feeling better soon. Glad you're still with us, most importantly. But back to your sugar shine. Yeah, put your oyster shells in there and keep your temps regulated. Watch your pH, and should happen pretty quickly. But yeah, we only got a couple more days for the. I've not been getting double EXP in my Warzone. To get off topic here, but I'm pissed because used to when I get double EXP in Warzone, I mean every game I'm getting one complete thing, and sometimes some games I'm getting two, right? Getting 20 kill games and placed in the top 5. That should get me at least well into one, halfway into the next one, sometimes two if you started out. But I'm not. It seems like I'm not even getting double. And my mission yesterday was to kill more than 10 people and finish in the top 10 was one of my, the 3 missions that you have to do to get you points. And I had like 14 kills, placed third, and didn't even count. So I'm about fed up with that game. So many cheaters. This past Thursday, Wednesday night, Thursday, all day Thursday. There's so many damn cheaters on there, man. It was crazy. It was, and I can tell when I'm up against a cheater. It's it wasn't pretty. But back here we go. Let's see. Yeah, and two, you have to base your column on your steel. So if you have like a 3 to 5 gallon steel, a 6-inch column is going to be ridiculously too large. It's not going to be very conductive, and you don't get a decent vapor velocity. Whereas, maybe a 1-inch, would be a little bit undersized for it. But a 2 works pretty well on a keg. I think a 3 or 4 would be even awesome, more so on a keg, or 18 and a half Vever. 13, I think a 2 to 3 would be plenty big enough. But as you get up, like we're saying, you get up to, the 60 plus gallons, maybe going to a six is, and even on up, you see some of these, commercial distilleries with 500 gallons, they got 24-inch columns, and it's crazy. Two and a half pounds per gallon. That's gonna be pretty hot, bro. How many gallons? I'd add some water to that. That's going to be a pretty high gravity. That's going to be maybe above a 1.1, 1080. Let's see. Yeah, it's going to be right at a 1.1. I'm afraid. Going to be pretty hot. What's going on, Mike? Yes, clitoris. Seen for me. You seen a clitoris before? I had to. Yeah, Clint's my helper. We're on here every Wednesday and Saturday, man. Oh, what sucks, bro? Oh, him getting hit by an SUV. Yeah, it does. Yeah. And, that got me thinking about some of these truckers, and they're not necessarily drunk drivers, but, some of these guys never driven a truck before, decide they're going to become a trucker and they're going to make 100,000 a year. And next thing you know, they Swift or somebody that hires a lot of green peas are putting them behind the wheel, and next thing you know, they're making U-turns in the interstate, killing people and doing stupid stuff. And it's, they found out in California they gave, I don't know, tens of thousands of CDLs out to people who had no idea what the road signs said, and I don't think ever took a test. It's bad, man. What's going on, Mr. Shadow? Oh, we just sitting there talking to somebody ask questions. We'll just sit and chat. We've been talking a lot about columns. I got a new column, and maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll do a video on how to put one of these damn things together. Yeah, maybe we can make a video on that, because it's going to be it's the erector set of columns. It'd be pretty sweet once it's done, and it won't be that hard, but it's just going to be a time consumer. So it'll be interesting putting it together. I look forward to using it though, because I've got quite a bit of stuff I want to neutralize, and I've got some old wine that doesn't taste good. And what are you talking about? Oh, I will. If you do, I will. I'll pounce, buddy. I mean, all over. I might even use some adjectives. I will say something like that. I said, well, you know what? Maybe that's one way of doing it, or this way, or something like that. I try to be tactful about it. I won't beat you down too bad. No, no, it's actually we're here to keep people from getting hurt. That's my whole point, and a lot of what I do is to make the hobby safe and enjoyable. And I don't want people burning themselves up. I don't want them exploding. I don't want them drinking bacteria, wine and beer. I don't want them, drinking 4 shots. And I want them to make the hobby safe. I don't want them redistilling high proof and telling people on these web pages that stills can't explode. I mean, that was on one of these group pages just a few days ago. Stills don't explode. They just don't. And it's like, how in the hell can somebody get on the group and make that kind of statement knowing there's been countless stills that have exploded over the history of time? And then you start saying, well, people put, their thumper, downcombers in and plug a grape and all of a sudden create back pressure. And he said, well, that's not what I was talking about. That's building up pressure. Sure, it can explode if that happens. I'm like, well, shit happens, bro. Just don't post that kind of shit. It pisses me off. And I don't want to get started on it on them, in the group, because if that'd been my group, I'd probably just removed them, because saying something like that is dangerous and it's stupid, and there's just it's just no sense in it. And people say, oh, it won't build pressure if you do it right. Well, no, not everybody's doing it right. Shit happens, and that's why we teach people, and sometimes things do happen. And sometimes, if you do have whole grapes in that thumper and they're bouncing around, popping around, sloshing, and one pukes up into into the worm and lodges itself, or the same if you got a steel puking and you got a small vever that's got a 3/8 inch line, and you got some you're trying to distill on the grain or something, and you get you clogged up and it explodes. Yeah, you build the pressure, it will explode. Oh, well, that's different. No, it's not different. Don't get on here and tell people that stills won't explode. That's just stupid, you know. And they say, oh, well, redistilling high proof is not a risk. It's absolutely a risk. You should always proof it to 80 or below. It's a safety standard. That doesn't mean that if you don't, it's going to happen every time. No, but if you do have a vapor leak and it ends up being that ultra high proof like that, it makes it so much more dangerous. It's just exponential danger, and it makes me mad. And if I think they should ban anybody that just comes in and says that, give them maybe a warning. Don't ever come in and say something stupid like that again, and let them know that's just the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard. I mean, you can just pull up Mythbusters and they proved him wrong just in a couple of, there's 2 different episodes of Mythbusters where they made a exploding steel inside a little steel room. And they're like, oh, well, they sealed it up and taped it up and stuff. And I'm like, they did that so they could control the amount of air inside there. They had to feed it air, because in order for it to explode, it's got to have vapor, and then it's got to have a given amount of air, and it's got to have an ignitable open flame. So we do it on, gas. We're using propane. We got the steel. If we got a slow leak we don't know about, gases are building up, and we're inside of the steel shack. It gets to the exact right amount of air. You got vapor, you got air, and then you got the open fire. Boom, your shack does explode. It can explode. It will explode. Don't say that stupid shit in here. Ooh, and then they just kind of, well, that's if this and that. No, they're all, you don't get to do that. It really, really bothers me when I see that kind of shit. That is the Shadow. That's not Uncle Moonshine. That's Mr. Shadow. He was, I guess, on one show. They were both in the same podcast with people I'm not even going to mention, but they called them frauds because they said it was the same person. So, yeah. What's going on, Mike? Yeah, man, I get fired up over some of that shit. The Shadow. No, he's not lesser than. He's just a shadow. Different Mark. Great guy, both of them. Right. Yeah. I mean, this is all theoretical. This is, and I had to add 21 plus on this because we had some kids coming in and trying to troll us and stuff. So, I had to put that on there for disclaimer, and I may end up having to add a disclaimer. This is just for informational purposes only, educational purposes only. Don't try this at home, that kind of shit. But these days, I guess. But I just want the hobby to be safe, and I really do believe that um, I think it's unconstitutional to prevent us from making our own liquor at home. I think that our forefathers made it. Washington had it. I mean, they still go up to there every year. You see Amanda and Alan Bishop and a few of them up there every year. JJ and my buddy Joe Jackson up there, all of them, distilling up there, and he was the first one to make a liquor tax too, strangely enough. But yeah, I mean, our forefathers did it. I think it should be a constitutional right that's part of your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. What you do in your home, kind of thing, and maybe if you're worried about safety, which I doubt they are, it's all about the Benjamins and the tax dollars, because they allow you to make wine and beer because that doesn't have much alcohol in it, and they tax it by the alcohol volume, and taxing beer and wine is very minimal, and the hard liquor is where all the money's at because that's where all the proof is. So taxed by the proof, and they only really worry about the hard stuff, and that's what it's all about. It's really not about safety. But if it was, and they claim it to be, then maybe have some classes, and require somebody to take some classwork before they do their hobby or something. That'd be fine. But I really do believe that should be part of our fundamental rights, is to as a hobby, to make our own liquor, as long as we're not doing huge amounts and selling it. And technically I think you should be able to do that as well. But I don't think the beams and the Heaven Hills of the world are going to really like that. So they lobby against us, and they keep it to where they've got a monopoly on their corner to market. But I think that we should all be able to do this on our own time, and yeah, even if you're doing it right, shit can happen. Ask Marfugel Field. He had a little Weber. He was doing everything right, but I guess when he clamped it down, he didn't realize it. But one of those little hooks that hook on your little clamp that clamps down the clasp was off. He didn't realize it, and it wasn't enough pressure on that side of the pot. And as the thing started going, he went out. He knew it was going to take 45 minutes to an hour before anything happens. So he was going to go out and have a cigarette while it warmed up. And I guess the cigarette got to looking on Facebook maybe and on his phone and got busy. And the next thing you know, he's comes into his shop, and he's got fire on his ceiling, and it still was like a flamethrower. It didn't explode, but it became a flamethrower. And he pulled out the fire extinguisher, which when we talk about equipment, fire extinguisher should probably be the first piece of equipment you buy. And if you don't have one, get one. Everybody should have one anyway. But every shine shack, every kitchen, everybody should have one. And after his accident, I've got one. I was like, man, that's, he fortunately had that, and it saved his home. He got the fire put out, but it was raging, and those alcohol fires are pretty hot. It's like a flamethrower. It's literally, you've seen people drink it and blow flames. That's what it still was doing, and that's a hot flame coming out of there. So, it can happen very easily. Yeah. Yeah, actually, you can pack that football. You can pack it with it, or where it comes out of the football and goes into your uh, canister. You can pack it there, but that football is a perfect place to pack it, and you can use those little clay. The clay, not a ball. They're like little spools, I guess, little pipe sections. But what you'd call that? But anyway, yeah, those little clay, you could put those in the bottom and put your mesh out on top of that. I just roll it up and just you know roll it loosely and just cram it in there, and just forcing that vapor over that copper will remove the sulfites. It's just, especially in stuff like I was talking earlier. I don't know if you heard it, and most people do what you do. Most people just listen, they don't comment, and I appreciate you, Richard, and just comment, and just say most people just listen, and we got most people don't watch it live either. Most, I'd say less than 10% watch this live. The majority of the thousands that watch it is later on in the week, sometimes 2 weeks from now, I got a little graph. It shows when people watch it, how many people watch it, and it just keeps growing and growing as time passes. So, we get very few watching it live, and I stress, if you got questions, jump on here live and ask them. But otherwise, just listening in at your convenience. I know a lot of people, when they do some streaming and stuff, they'll get discouraged because they won't see, 20, 30, 40 people in there, no, sometimes 10, 20, 30 people. And they're like, well, I don't have that many people watching me. And that's when it shows that number at the top. That's just the page that you're on, and we do it on 4 different pages, and that's just a small fraction of the people that actually watch it over the course of a week. And in fact, I figure it's probably around 7% of the people that watch this within 2 or 3 weeks watch it live. So it's a small amount. So don't get discouraged if you do a video, because a lot of these viral videos and stuff that people do, sometimes they don't have anybody watching. They'll just put out a video and it just gets passed around for a month or two, and just before you know it, it's been seen a million times. So, that's how the internet works. So it just keeps growing and growing, and people share and share it with friends. And, check this out. We need to start doing this hobby, or we need to, we've been doing this for a while. Maybe this would be a good place to come ask questions and stuff. Old Joe and Clint seem to know what they're talking about. Scott and a few others help out, and, a lot of knowledgeable people in there, and be a good place to come ask our questions and listen, and a lot of people go back and will watch the earlier videos once they start getting interested in it, and picking up. There's a couple old ones I've done that get heavily scientific. So if you're on that, if you're into the science, look through a few of them, and happen upon that one. I did one episode with just, we delved into science and got advanced, just to help meet the demand for people that were, wanting something more advanced, and it went pretty well. For a lot of the beginners, it's like, wait, what? And they just kind of sat back and didn't have a whole lot of questions because they didn't know what to ask, when it gets pretty. But I just wanted to do it for the intermediate to advanced, and we try to help mostly beginners out, because that's generally the people that have the questions, and a lot of questions is beginners. So, um, but yeah, if you put it in that football, it's going to be a lot safer, because little particles can come up, and it just starts coating that mesh, holds it, right. It gets stuck up in that mesh, and it'll just hold it there. And that little corn kernel gets up in there, and it, little pieces just start accumulating, and then they just snowball. Once some accumulate, it forces the vapor to another area even more, and then that area gets clogged up, and before you know it, you can start building pressure, and that's definitely something we don't want. But the football heads, technically, they're set up to rectify. So you can open up the bottom one and let some tails out. The bottom of that uh, football, there's a little valve down in it, so you can open up that every once in a while, because it'll collect some tails in the bottom of that, and you can let that out into a cup, or you can run a line, to get it away if you're running propane, for sure. Even though those tails aren't probably going to be very flammable at that temperature and proof, as the temperature goes up, it less and less proof becomes ignitable. So some people think, well, 80 proof won't light, 80 proof or above before it'll light up. No, that's not true. You can take 60 proof and increase the temperature of it, and it'll light up quite readily at 150, 80 degrees. Trust me, it'll light right up. So as lower proof gets hotter, it'll ignite too. But yeah, you can drain that off for the tails, and the top. You can open that up and let some heads out every once in a while. And actually that's one of the ways to run that rectifying head. Most people don't run the football stills properly. I don't fool with it either. I'm not, I use it as a whiskey helmet type thing, and use it, get a little reflux out of it, and just use it as a regular cap. But you can definitely rectify with it a little bit. It's, in theory, it works ish. It's not enough, but it does help if you want to run it that way. But I don't. Yeah, absolutely. Each one That's good, brother. Yeah, Richard works hard. Charlene, his wife's one I was talking about earlier that is on the ladies' night. Awesome peeps. Yeah, I couldn't believe that, man. It's just irresponsible. Just and it's people that think they know and they just go on feelings and what they think instead of the actual science, and it's just not true. I could, I'm not gonna pull out any names. I'm not gonna call anybody out, but when you make posts like that, it doesn't take long to find out who said it and where. And it's not my group, not when I'm an admin or a moderator in, so I really don't have a lot of say in it. But if they bring that shit to one of my groups, they'll be dealt with pretty harshly. Because I don't mind people asking questions, but to come in there and make a blind statement like that and throw Einstein's E equals MC squared out there like that means anything, it's just some dumbass trying to impress people with his ignorance, and that's all he's done. You can tell him I said that if you know him. I don't care, because that's gonna get people hurt, and that's why we're here, is to make it a safe hobby. Yeah, absolutely. When you do that, absolutely, John. When you have a thumper, you no longer have an open air system, right? So theoretically, with your steel, it goes up, it comes over, it goes through the worm or the condenser, shotgun, deflect or Liebig or whatever, and it's open air. It just flows. It's open air and it doesn't clog. It's not a closed system. When you have that thumper and that downcomer is covered in liquid, all of a sudden you have a closed system now. It's no longer free breathing. Now you got back pressure. Now you can also collapse your steel because as it cools, it can't suck. It's trying to suck that liquid back and get air. And as it draws liquid in, it's not getting enough air, so it'll implode on you. And that's a good way to crush a good steel. I've seen a lot of nice copper steels go just like a can. They're up there. That's what their nice copper steel looks like if they don't open that valve or pull a cap off while running a thumper or anything. And you don't even have to have a closed system. It's best to always have it. Now they have these little vacuum things on top. Now that's fine, but it's a $4 Chinese part that can fail and often do. But really, what won't fail is a half or a 3/8 or 3/4. I'm sorry, half or 3/4 inch ball valve right on your cap. Just open that thing up, boom. My Vever, they'll have two little valves on the top, and they're small, 1/4 inch, but that's enough, just enough to suck that air in when it needs to. That's all it takes. Just a valve to open up and let air in. Some people take that tri clamp off. It's hotter than fuck. It's 200 degrees. You're gonna have to put your grill gloves on or have a glove on, but you can bust that open and who cares if a little steam gets out? It's not the end of the world. As long as you're not a very tight and closed space, it's not gonna, you're not gonna have an explosion. Your gas is already turned off, right? So you no longer have an open flame. But yeah, I've seen some people with $2,000 or $3,000 nice copper steels look like that can out there, and we're trying to help them, hook it to an air compressor to blow it back out and solder up the holes from the creases and if there is any. So, yep. Right. And but sometimes those fail, and that's a pressure relief valve. Um, PRV, pressure relief valve. Um, those are great, but sometimes they fail. And I think technically, I think steel should have a little pressure gauge on there like our pressure cookers do. How hard would that be? I mean, those things aren't $10. I mean, we only deal with 3 to 5 psi when we distill, and that's not much. But I mean, pressure cookers go 5, 10, 15. So that's, at 5 psi, that's as much pressure in some pressure cookers that you pressure cook with. So think about it. It wouldn't be a bad little thing to have on your steel. It'd be something cool to look at too. Sit there and check you out, have a little fancy something to look at to distract us from what we're doing. That and a thermometer and a little sight glass to watch it bubble. Jar rigs to watch them bubble. It's all mesmerizing. We love it. What's going on, Sir Smoke? Well, I checked out your Norfolk, New York. So if you ever get up that way in upstate New York, visit Sir Smokes a lot and drink some of his elderberry and cherry wine, apple cranberry. All sounds good, man. You're gonna have to learn how to distill that now and start making some elderberry. Elderberry is a really good berry to use. It's great. It's a great in combination. I think he makes a rhubarb too. He's not mentioning that, but they make a rhubarb wine as well. But he may have mentioned that since then. I'm a little bit behind. Let's see, 9:25. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit behind on my rant about the safety. But yeah, they make some interesting wines up there. But elderberry is a really good berry to use not only alone, but in combination with other fruits and wines. It very interesting. It makes a good combination in a lot of different things. Elderberry and blackberry, elderberry and cherry. Yeah, it's very, very good in combination, alone and in combination. That's right, man. And you can open up those valves when you're done. Just open them up. There's 2 in the lid. There's 2 in the football. And especially if you're running a thumper, open those bad boys up and you're fine. Absolutely. Popcorn Sutton. Yeah, he was a character now, I tell you. He was a wild man. I know. I do too. Every time I want to clean it out, I'll just run that vinegar. And that's what I'm making. As that wine vinegar, isn't it? What you put in there. I'm just distilling some wine vinegar for cooking. Hell yeah. That's an awesome job to have. That's right. I think Clint's getting, I think he's got a little bit smoke. Talking about HR puffing stuff. Y'all remember that? Man, that's going back some time, man. That's going down the time traveling. It's pretty easy to do. It's basically you've got the hard part down is making the must and the wine to go into it. So if you ever make any mistakes in your wine, don't dump it. Just keep it in a fermenter under a airlock, and as you have these screw ups, which winemakers have, as long as it doesn't have vinegar in it, you keep adding it to that fermenter and just let it sit there. And when you get enough, you can throw it in a still and distill it, and either make a decent brandy out of it or make some neutral, make some vodka out of it, and then use that to flavor some drinks or add some flavor to make some drinks. Yeah, it is, man. It's getting my all this talk gets my throat a little dry. And all the thrush I get from drinking so damn much makes it even drier. It makes my tongue white. I got some kind of pills or little tablets to chew up they gave me, and it's like helps the thrush. If they knew how I was getting it, they would probably quit giving it to me. They're like, "How in the world do you keep getting thrush?" I don't know. It's drinking at high proof. It gives every damn bacteria in your mouth, good and bad. His videos are good and educational, but you get better out here. Yeah, his are great. I enjoyed watching them. I watched probably about every one he's ever made, and they're great. But if you have questions, watch them. It that's why we're here. It's there's lots of videos out there that have the how tos and all this and show you how they do it. And there's many ways to arrive at a drip, but there's none out there that just have people that know what they're talking about that you can just jump on once a week, twice a week, and ask them any question you got, and you'll get a good answer. There's just not a lot that are able to do that or willing to do that. The ones that are able to do it, most of them aren't willing to do it because they're too busy doing other shit. I'd love to have Patrick Heist on, once or twice a week to ask him every question I got. The dude's a freaking genius, man. Probably the most knowledgeable distiller in the world, and I'd love to be able to pick his brain anytime I want to, but he's a busy, busy man. Same with Alan. He's got a distillery going, and he's got a lot on his plate, so he's not able to, jump in and answer a question. Wayne, very knowledgeable, and he's on, one Friday a month maybe with Damon, kind of answering questions and dealing with that kind of stuff, trying to help out as well now, and that's great. Wayne's a great guy, knowledgeable. And but watching the videos, you can they're great and you can learn a lot from them. But if you have questions, you have to watch a lot of the videos to get your answers. So that's kind of where we come in. It's I'm not really interested in doing the TikTok thing and the short videos. I don't want to get out the camera and be all the theatrics. I just sit and talk and drink and shoot the shit with my buddies. And when people come in with questions, we can answer them. We can help them out and have another drink. So that's what we kind of do. Yeah, distillation science, it is awesome, man. And the more you get into it, the more you realize that, a lot of this stuff is, especially in the fermentation part, our bodies are doing a lot of the same things that's happening in a fermentation. Our bodies break fruits and vegetables and break down the starches so we can send energy to our cells so our cells can feed our muscles and feed our blood to feed our muscles and oxygenate and it's very similar to what happens in our bodies happens in a fermentation vessel. Very, very similar. We got we talked about the enzymes in our spit, and how some tribes use spit for an enzyme to break down your starches, so it makes beers and wines, and some of the grains that they make. Very interesting, that's what they've done found out over the years, and how it works. It's very, very interesting. Yeah, it's sometimes deceptive. Yeah, it is, and sometimes when you see a number, in the top left corner, that may just be on the actual one that you're watching at any given time, and that actual page. But there could be a lot more on other pages. We streamed a lot of different pages and a lot of different platforms. So I used to do a little streaming to Twitch and Kick, but it's getting a little bit more difficult to log on to them, and I don't get much more than trolls usually from it. So that's mostly gamers and for IRL type things. Kind of like the TikTok of streaming, I guess. Yep, it's a science and an art. Hello, Miss Tammy. How are you? Good to see you. Hope y'all had a good Thanksgiving over there in Garrett County. That's my neighbor. Yeah, there's a lot of bad info out there, and it really bothers me when if it's bad info, like on giving a bad recommendation for yeast. That's just an opinion. Yeah, that that yeast you're telling them, bread yeast probably is not going to make a very great wine, you know, not probably something I would want to use in my wine. Fleischmann's isn't probably a very good wine yeast. So, why recommend that to somebody, but that's still an opinion. Some people might like bread yeast wine, more power to them. It's just that most people don't. And, some things are better than others, right? But when it comes to certain facts and certain safety, um, what could you run a hose from the top back into your pot? Okay, let me. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Actually, I do that. I do. Well, I don't do it off the football into my pot, but yeah, you could run it straight from that football back into that valve on your pot. Um, Absolutely. But I do it a different way. When I run my column, when I infuse at the bottom of my infuser, I have a little drain, and off that comes a line, and I can run that directly back into the pot or into a jar, which goes into the funnel into the pot. Either way, so it's same thing. But I found I just like run it into a jar and then open up everything so I have open air. Then I can open up that valve and pour it in through the funnel, and it doesn't spit out because it's free airing out at other places, right? Off gassing at other places, so it doesn't really feed back through the funnel. And I just funnel it in that way. But yeah, you could. That's called a retort when you do that. You're just retorting it back into your steel. Sure can, and it's a good thing to do. But don't use vinyl. Use a silicone hose that's designed to handle alcohols and different esters and different compounds that we're dealing with. Where a vinyl hose probably is not going to be adequate. You're going to get microplastics. But use a good silicone hose. The hose that comes with your Vever football is a perfect one to use. It comes with a little bit of hose, and that's the silicone. Yeah, yeah. And Alan, Alan and I've been talking for years, and he saw some of the designs and stuff I was doing with my Vever, and so he got one and started experimenting with it and fooling with it. And he's found the same thing I have. They're awesome little steels, for what they've got a bad reputation because they're three pots and some of the gaskets that come with it and the undersized plumbing that came with it and how they were arranged with the thumper and uh, the worm and flake and condenser sitting right on top of the steel where it's hot, and not away from the steel where you really need it. And if it's on gas, you've got it dripping right down next to the side, and it's just not good, not safe, not a good design. But the actual football steels they're a great little design. I mean, is it better than a keg steel? In ways it is, in ways it's not. There's pros and cons to both, but both are excellent starters. For a beginner, I can't recommend either one. Highly enough. With a keg, you're going to have to buy additional things. You're going to have a column or a head for it, and you have to get a condenser set up for it. Whereas the football steels, if you don't want to do a lot of fabrication and you don't want to do reworking and stuff like that, you can use that football steel just as it comes, clean it up real good, use it, and you don't have to buy anything else. It's ready to go, and you can make decent liquor your first run. And it works well for whiskeys and brandies. That football is great for ultra high proof. It's probably not going to be the best thing for you, but you can take that football off. You can get a 2.5 into 2 and run a 2-inch column with sight glasses packed with your mesh. If that's what you want to do, I stack some sight glasses and put mesh in those because I like watching the little bubblies. I like loading up the copper mesh and keeping a certain amount of reflux, and I can keep track of the reflux that way. You don't have to have it that way. I guess you go spool, sight glass, spool, and just kind of, gauge what's going on and load it properly and keep the reflux kind of in the middle, and do it that way. So, they both work quite well, and kegs and little Beaver football stills are what I recommend for beginners and intermediates. And, even, I mean, you should see some of the setups I've run off that 18.5 gallon Beaver. I've run some very sophisticated, heads off that. I mean, just the way I've plumbed it into, bypasses and diverting to do it. I've got a setup where it comes off the Vever, and I've got a valve there, a T with a valve, and I got a valve on each side of the T. I can open up one side and it goes straight through into a condenser, and I can strip all day on that side, and then boom, I can shut that down. I can open it up and pour everything back in to my back set, and I can run it again on the left side where I've got an inline infuser, and that works great. Another condenser over here. I can run it with a deflagrator on top and adjust the amount of reflux. It's the sky's the limit on what you can do, because it's got that, versatility that the tri-clamp type system gives you. It's like, Legos. It's like the building blocks of a steel. Once you get to the tri-clamp and you start dealing with spools, and next thing you do, you got T's that you can work with. You've got elbows. You've got, U-traps, which is what my inline infuser is. It's a U-trap with a trap on the bottom. It's got a inlet on the bottom that's the tri-clamp, and I go directly into a drain valve so I can fill that tube up with my flavorings. And then when it gets watered down, I can dump it. It's undersized, so I'm going to have to change that design a little bit. I'm going to go with copper infusion chambers instead of doing the inline thing, but it's all a learning process. And I guess if I went into a 4-inch, 4-inch spools and elbows and the U-trap, it'd probably be perfect size, but that 4-inch stainless U-trap is very expensive. So I believe I'll be making copper chambers, but it's all just experimentation, a lot of fun. That's part of the hobby for me is doing different, designs like that and doing different things with it like that. And it's very, very sophisticated. It looks like a refinery, but it's got a lot of valves, and it looks like something, Willy Wonka or something. But a lot of people are like, I believe I don't want to do that. I'm afraid to blow myself up, And if you have two valves closed at the same time, you would. So you have to know, and you can't. This is not something you'd want to be drinking and operating, but it works great. I can strip on one side and then pour it back in and get a second run and flavor without ever doing anything but turning the gas off and opening it up and dumping it back in and running it out the other side. Man, it works great. And it's a little micro distillery, and I've thought about marketing it as such. And if anybody has a craft distillery out there and they're interested in the technology and want to incorporate it, I mean, I'll give you the info and the input, no charge. I'm not trying to make money out of it. I would have, I'd have patented a lot of the stuff I've shared a long time ago, like the bypass and shit. But I'm not in it for that. I'm just trying to make, share the info and help teach basics and learn and experiment and come up with new ideas and new things. It's a lot of fun for me. Yeah, exactly. And once you start digging into the science, it's like, wow, I had no idea that that's actually what was happening, to make this work. Especially, the science of enzymes and how it reacts with starches and how yeast interacts with sugar and the byproducts that are produced, not just the alcohol, but a lot of the different congeners and other things that are produced, a lot of the esters and, you know, polyphenols and flavonoids and all the things that are, combined to create distillate. It's actually not a P trap. It's a U. It's equal on each side and it comes down. It's a U trap. I know what the P trap is, that you're right, for the sink and stuff, but this is technically it's a U, and it has a, it's upstairs. I have to go get it and show it to you, but it has a, a um, ferrule on each side, and it comes down into a U, and it's got a ferrule on the bottom. So it's very similar to a P trap, but it's actually a big U. So it doesn't have any of the elbows in it. It's just the U. So it doesn't, it's a little bit different, but it's very expensive to try to buy a 4-inch. I looked at it and was like, I think I'll just make some copper and do it a little bit differently. It'll still be in line, but it'll be in line into a copper pot, kind of like a jar rig with drains and maybe a little portal glass to look at. So I can see what's going on inside and know the level. When it gets up to a certain height, I know I need to dump it. But it's going to be, just experiment and fun. He's talking about on the football. You can cool that football. I mean, you could sit there and spray. You could sit and spray cold water on it with just a spray or two. And on the top of the Vever steel, just sit there and spray cool water on it, or have a fan blowing on it. And, that's why a lot of times when moonshiners would work outside and they'd have that big copper cap and it'd start raining, they noticed the proof would go up. It's like, well, damn, that proof went up during that rain is because that cap is getting rained on, cooling it off and causing reflux. So they figured out real quick, wow. Next thing you know, they were spraying it, putting fans on it, and before long they were wrapping tubes around it and trying to cool it off, and doing all kinds of different experiments. Venison snack sticks, yeah, man, that jerky's good. I had some of that jerky. I don't know if I made it home with any though. I think I made it home with any of that jerky. We had it Maggie this year. I did try some though. Yeah. I mean, that's all it is, it goes in and it bubbles and then it comes back out. It's just trapping it, right? So an inline infuser is essentially the same. It's just like a bong, like a bong. You've got that coming in, it's bubbling through the liquid to pick up flavor or remove bad stuff, right? Like in a bong, and then comes on out the other side. So yeah, it's a lot like a bong. Yeah, me too, man. All that sausage. I'm sipping that. Elijah Johnson, Elijah Craig. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's well, what happened with Georgie is an outfit came in and bought all his videos and stuff for YouTube and all his work and stuff that he'd done, and I guess they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So he gave them all the rights, and I guess he had a non-disclosure and I guess an agreement that he wouldn't start doing the same thing again, just on a different channel under a different name or something like that. So it's a non-compete agreement. So I'm not sure how long that lasted. I think it maybe done by now, but he's just, maybe ready to move on. I'd like to talk to him though and see. But yeah, I watched probably pretty much all his videos. I watched a lot of the different ones that are out there. I'm like a lot of people here. I may not comment on stuff, and I'll just sit and watch them all. And I watched about half of Papa Lines. I got watch the other half. I wasn't able to catch it live. I was right in the middle of dinner, and me and the fiance were sitting there watching our show, and that's our quality time. So, but like everybody else, I'll pick it up later, and that's just like this. A lot of people, most of the people don't watch this live. Most, I'd say, 90% plus watch it later, and that's great. I'm perfectly fine with that. That's why I tell all the beginning, people streaming, don't get discouraged when you don't see a big number up there, that you're streaming to, because that's just the people that are watching it live, and and sometimes millions, tens of thousands more will be watching it later. In this case, I may get 20, 30, 50, depending across all the platforms watching it live. I'll get anywhere from 30 to 60 watching it live, sometimes more. Hard to tell on YouTube because it doesn't tell me a lot, but on Facebook, on the two that we stream to the militia page and to the Distilling 101 page, I'll get maybe 50 to 60 sometimes, but by a week or two from now, it could be 5, 6, 700. Sometimes 1,200, and that's just on Facebook alone. That doesn't count the YouTube, which probably has many, many, many more. And they just never comment. You never know how many's watching. So I don't get the statistics on the YouTube. I mean, Billy might. It's. I've never looked at the statistics. It shows a lot of times it'll show views, but it doesn't show, or it shows viewers. But a lot of times somebody will watch it, a little bit of it, and say, "Oh, I'll come back and watch the rest of this later." So it doesn't count that as like 2 views. It's just viewers, and they count. It's the same unique viewer, so it doesn't get counted twice. But as numbers aren't important, as long as there's people out there interested, I'm going to be here helping. As long as there's people out there that need it, I'm going to be here giving it. So that's awesome. And that tells me how far behind I am. I'm not too bad, 20 minutes. I'm glad y'all had a good Thanksgiving, Tam. Uh-oh. Yeah, those deviled eggs will do it, man. Somebody's asking me I saw a post on Facebook. When you make deviled eggs, do you use sweet relish or dill relish? That was the big question. I mean, for me, it's sweet. I don't know how many people use dill relish out there, but my granny and mom always did it with the sweet, and that's definitely the way we do it. It's just sweet relish. It'd be interesting to see how many people actually use dill relish. Well, now that depends on the size of the steel. Bigger the steel, the bigger the column. I got the 4-inch not just for the 18 and a half. I'm probably going to do 30 or 40. And on that, I think the 4 would definitely be better. Alan and I talked about it too, and he's like, with the surface area and stuff, and 18 and a half plus, yeah, the 4 is going to be better. If you've got a 5 or 8 gallon bever and you want to run the 2, that would be perfect, you know. Um, but with just that one bubbler, you know, is still, you know, I would want some mesh in there to help with that as well. But yeah, that 4 inch as opposed to the 3 has so much more area. In fact, I'm gonna do a little quick. I think it's probably gonna be like 40% more. 5.5 square inches more area than a 4 inch has 5.5 and a half square inches more surface area than a 3 inch circle. And as a percentage, 167% more. The area of a 4 inch circle is 16 pi square inches, while the area of a 3 inch circle is 9 pi square inches, which is 1.67 inch more. It's 167% larger. So it's 1.5 times larger. So it's considerably more area. It's more than double. So think about that. That's you know, once you put the math on it, it's like, wow, that's more than I thought. And it's definitely more than I thought too. I was thinking it wasn't that much, but yeah, 167% more. That's considerable. Yeah, George is great. He helped a lot of people. And I think everybody learned. You know, it's like, you know, here or there, or pretty much anywhere you listen to people that are talking about it, you're going to learn something. You know, unless you know it all, in which case you should probably have one, a video. But none of us profess to know it all. Hell, that's awesome, Mike. Hell yeah, and it's amazing how, you know, how it builds like that. You know, it's like, you know, like on the like some of my episodes, just one over 1,000 just on one on Facebook. Now on YouTube, it's open. You know, it's like a much larger market than just what, like on Facebook, you're pretty much limited to the people in the groups that you share it to. So, you know, there's a finite number. Whereas on YouTube, it's wide open. It's open to everybody. Anybody that searches for that topic is going to see, if they go down far enough in the search, you know, they're going to see your videos and stuff. And the more you see, the further you go to the top, until next thing you know, man, you're on the first page and you're getting tens of thousands. It's awesome. And Philbilly, I mean, you know, he's hundreds of thousands, you know, of subscribers, you know, viewers. So yeah, it's amazing. I think last 590 some thousand or some shit. It's awesome. So that's why I say it's hard telling how many people end up seeing these on YouTube, because it's going to out such a large number of people, you know, and they pick it up and they post it on, you know, different things, and it's, you never know really how many. Well, Fibly might, but I mean, I don't have access to those numbers. Yeah, but I enjoyed watching George's videos. Definitely. Yep, I do. This right here, 927. FSI 927. Richard, try that out. That's really good with grains. That's a whiskey yeast. That came from Firm Solutions, and awesome. I need to use this soon. I'm going to be using it very soon. Not off subject at all, brother. You're right on topic. Now, if we talk about Warzone or deviled egg farts and what kind of pickle relish you putting in them, that's still off subject. But no, brother, you're fine. But yeah, that I've heard from quite a few people that that's a really good whiskey yeast, and a lot of people don't know Patrick Heiss. He doesn't just run Firm Solutions in the lab. Uh, they have a top 10 bourbon distillery in the world, you know. Yeah. So well, and it's scalable, you know, and right. So 2 inch will give you the same vapor velocity on a 5 gallon still as a 3 would, hypothetically, and I'm not doing the math, on a 15 that a 4 would do on a 45 or something like that. So it's scalable, you know, as you get larger steel, it scales up, and you need to scale your column accordingly to get the same vapor velocity, right? So absolutely. But yeah, it's what is it? Oh my goodness, something trail. What is it? Wilderness Trail Distillery. Yeah, yeah, Wilderness Trail Distillery in Danville, Kentucky. Let me show you what he's got going on. I can enlarge that. Damn it, to get bigger. Well, shit. I'll just copy that best I can. I really wish that got bigger. Let me see if I can. No, I can't. Hang on. Anyway, I'm going to show you this stack here. We talk about columns and how they scale up, but this is probably a continuous column. Let me see here. I'm not going to pull that out. I'm just going to go directly to screenshots and grab that. I got so many screenshots it takes me a minute for my computer to process them, but check that out. That's a continuous column on the right, especially that big on the far right, or his left, but our right. Look at that big ass column there. See, I mean, it just scales right on up, but that's a continuous column, and you can see at the very base of it is a jacketed boiler, and it basically just boils vapor that fall into it, redistills, and just it redistills tails basically, or water that drops down. The water drops to the bottom, as do some of the tails, and it redistills those to put vapor up the column, and it forms an equilibrium in the middle of the column. You'll get a specific temperature where the higher volatiles go to the top of the columns, the hearts, heads and fours, higher volatiles go to the top of the column, the hearts will kind of maintain in the middle of the column, and all the tails and water drop down to the bottom where they get reheated, and to keep that column hot and keep that hot vapor, water and tail vapor going, to continuously balance out a liquid mash that's being fed in through the middle, right? And it just or towards the top, and it goes in through this and it heats up as it drops. And then once it gets to a certain temperature, it doesn't go all the way to the bottom. It all the higher volatiles go up, and that's the way the fractional columns work. And that's in a continuous column. Very interesting setup, but that's how those work. Pretty cool. Yeah, as far as grains, you know, heirloom corn is great, and if you're not aging, you can definitely tell much more difference than, and you can tell the difference if it's aged. I'm not saying it's not, but I think it's more significant as a white dog than a fully aged spirit. And I know there's a lot of whiskey people out there that are like, oh no, that's wrong. And for people with palates that can tell the difference, I'm sure they do believe that's wrong and probably is wrong. But for the most part, it also comes into cost benefit ratios. Is it really worth that much more cost over a yellow dent corn versus a bloody butcher? Some people would say, I'd rather have a yellow dent than a bloody butcher. It's oily, it's not the best tasting. That's just my personal belief. And maybe Ohio Blue's a little better and sweeter, but is it worth the difference in the cost? And that's just something that you have to decide. And as a white dog, I think 100% sure, absolutely, because you can definitely tell the difference in a bloody butcher, a yellow dent, and Ohio Blue. Um, so there is differences there, but I think as you age it in a barrel and you start getting that charcoal, you start getting the oak, and you start getting a lot of the esterification and the oils and acids combining and making all these different flavors. I think there is some uniqueness that like a bloody butcher would add, and maybe not be so bad. I know this bloody butcher sour mash, after you sour mash it, the first run may taste real oily and kind of bad, but subsequent runs, they taste fine. So after that first run or two, that oiliness kind of goes away, and that earthy oiliness goes away, and it's pretty good actually. So, but that's straight as a white dog. Now if you put that in a barrel over time, it may make that those oils may actually make something so much better. I just not had, most of the commercial places don't really do that. There's some craft places that do, and I've really not had been able to sit and sip and compare. Something I definitely want to try doing once they get some 5 and 8 year old heirloom aged. I look forward to trying some of that. But yeah, most of the continuous don't have a large capacity boiler. They don't. It just has it at the very bottom of the steel. So let me show you the picture again. So if you look at the very bottom of this, yeah, that's not big at all. The right where his left hand is touching, it almost looks like it's on top of it. That's the boiler in that. And it's probably a jacketed oil or steam, and it's just heating up the water that falls down there. Not big at all. No, maybe induction heat. It's hard to say without being there and seeing. Probably a jacketed steam, but yeah, it's not a big boiler at all. And in fact, it has a drain on it, and they'll let some out as it keeps feeding, the liquor in, and more and more water until it accumulate. They'll dump some out over time, and just to keep it at a certain level. But yeah, it's just basically used to heat up the column and suspend the hearts in the middle and the higher volatiles towards the top. And that's fractional distillation. We can't do that on pot still though. But yeah, I'd try different grains. But I'll tell you, I like just using the old yellow dent. I'm a cheap ass. I just hate spending high dollars on a lot of this, heirloom corn. I mean, people are paying $2 or $3, a pound if they're lucky. Some people are paying more, and for a 50-pound bag, that's $150 a bag as opposed to 8 of yellow corn. So is it worth 20 times the price? You be the judge. personally, for me, after it's aged in a barrel, I don't know. I mean, I'd love to compare the two, but I know, most of the finest bourbons in the world were made with yellow dent corn, and it's, the 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 barrel adds 60 to 80% of the flavor that you're getting. So 20 to 40, is maybe the corn and the process and how you do it, and that's what uniqueness that you can give to it. But I don't know. I look forward to trying some heirloom corn versus some of the finest bourbons that are made with just yellow dent. But as far as other grains, Richard, I like always using a little bit of oats to help soften it up a little bit, a little less harsh. But and some people love rye, and some people not too fond of the spiciest of the rye. So it's just opinions. But I like a little bit of barley, a little bit of corn, a little bit of oats, and I'm a wheated guy. I like a little bit of wheat in there for the sweetness that and grassiness that a wheat brings. I like that. So it's just varying opinions. But I prefer a wheat over a rye. But everybody, has differing opinions on that. So there's no right and wrong answer, but just try different ones. But I always do like throwing a little handful or two of oats in there to help soften things up, even if it doesn't amount to a major percentage. It helps. All right, you going to use sweet relish or a dill relish? That's the question. Yep, that is one thing that we can all be sure of. We'll never know it all. That's 100% fact. Yep. Yeah, most of your continuous columns they don't even have hardly a boiler to speak of at all, like the big copper one on his right, our left. Yeah, that's a hybrid. That's what's feeding that column. Yeah, that's a hybrid. They call that a hybrid. It's a pot um, column combo. But the one on his left there, I guess that's a continuous. Looks like continuous still. Have not Gabe. What? Reboiler, not recoiled, have not Gabe. Smoking the same thing. I know what you're saying, brother. Yeah, they don't. Most your continuous columns don't. They sure don't. Well, I'm caught up and it's 10:30. I'm tired after this Thanksgiving. What did they use, sweet or dill pickles? That's the big question. It's on Facebook right now. And my mom and granny always used the sweet relish, but I guess there's some people out there that uses dill pickle for deviled eggs. I don't know. We've never done the dill pickle. I mean, I like dill pickles on my burgers and stuff, and on sandwiches and stuff, but not in the deviled eggs. I don't know. It's different. Yeah, man. Well, I didn't eat a lot of turkey yet. We're gonna do ours, I guess, Tuesday. Ann was gonna do it today, but that 20-pound turkey, it's been thawing in the refrigerator for 4 days, and it's still kind of a little bit frozen in the middle. So I don't like sitting them out to thaw them out because bacteria, really not supposed to sit them out like that to let them thaw. You're supposed to let them thaw in the fridge, and I guess the bigger they are, the longer it takes. And we got a big old 20-pounder, and it's going to take a little while. So But if you leave them sitting out, it can form some bacteria. You know, it's not the best way to thaw them out. I guess you can put them in water and they transfer that coldness to the water more readily. But I didn't want to fill up the sink and do all that, and I couldn't submerge it totally in the sink anyway. It's a big ass turkey, so we'll have to wait until Tuesday. Well, yeah, one's used for stripping, and I think a continuous column and then a rectification column there on that pot. It's a hybrid, and they probably have more too. That's probably just a couple of several they have at Wilderness Trail. It's one of the top 10 producers in the world for bourbon. You know, so that's probably not a fraction of what they had. I went out to Bluegrass um, with Jeff not too long ago and looked at what they had and took the tour. And of course, the guy giving the tour, I was asking questions. He's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So they need somebody with a little more knowledge doing the tours. Right. Yeah. Well, actually, the copper one that's on the left. His right. The guy that's standing there is, yeah. That copper is feeding. I guess it's going. I don't know. I can't see the top of it, but I think it's going to the column in between the copper pot and the big column. I think that big column is a continuous, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you can see. Oh, yeah, you can see a big copper pot to the right of that one too. So, yeah, maybe. Yeah, it could be. I thought that on the bottom of that was made that. Well, that I'll have to zoom. Let me. I can't make it bigger, but I do see a big copper pot on the right now. That's halfway cut off. That's feeding a. Well, it looks like there's a column there to the right of that. And I don't know if that's feeding that large column in the middle. I'd have to have a little closer look at it. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I can't really tell where the plumbing goes. But it looks like it goes up and into those two columns there that are out to the far right. And I'm guessing that's for stripping, right? Right, right. Well, I wasn't sure if the one on the left was continuous or just fed from a hybrid from that one column or that one pot there. Is it? Okay. Actually, the one on the left I thought was feeding that big tall one, and I thought it was just fractionally distilling from that pot. And then I thought the one I guess in the middle was the continuous. I don't know. Yeah, you'd have to go there and see. I'd have to see how it was. It's hard for me to follow that plumbing from what I'm seeing. If it was enlarged, I could probably see it better. And on mine, I've got live and then numbers and then thumbs up marks, and it's taking up the top 20% of my picture, so I can't see. Yeah. Anyway, that's what they got going on, and that's probably just one of several they have there at the Wilderness Trail. But that's Patrick Heiss's place, man. He's brilliant. That dude knows a lot, man. He's very, very intelligent. Probably the most knowledgeable person there is. Yeah, I'm fixing to go to bed too. I'm tired. It's been a long week. I might get me a game or two of Warzone in. I got my missions to do, so I can get to bed by 11:30. All right, y'all. Well, everybody have a great week. I'd say the 927 is probably 75 to 80, Richard. I'd say, you'll be fine in the 75 to 80 range. If you're not sure about your yeast and what temperature to run it at, 75 to 80 is pretty good. If you know it's a wine yeast, tend to go to 75 or lower. If you're not sure and it's a whiskey yeast, probably similar to a daty, then maybe 75 to 80. But if you don't get a lot of activity at 75, bump it up to 80. They'll start working when they get happy. You'll see a larger production, and generally for fruits and musts and wines, the lower temperature is what those yeasts want more. But generally, grain yeast are closer to a bread yeast, and 75 to 85 in those range. But 80, 75 to 80 is a safe range to keep them at. And if you're not sure, it may take a little bit longer, but they're certainly not going to stress. So. Yeah, Wilderness Trail. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit that thumbs up, like button. Share it with a friend. If you got some friends that you'd like to share the hobby with, and get them involved, and some of your buddies, your hunting buddies, and everybody you'd like to do, and have something to do at the hunting shack, and get away from the house and do. It's almost as good as shooting pool. So you can do both. But everybody have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks for tuning in. We will see y'all Wednesday night. And until then, shine on. See y'all. Thanks for tuning in.